Hi, I'm Nancy Tolson, and this is FAAAC Presents 30 Americans, a storytelling celebration. Today, we are celebrating the life of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. This is also the closing day of 30 Americans. Come see it by 5 p.m. today, or you'll miss it completely. I'm excited to host this online celebration today. We have 4 wonderful storytellers, Miss Elsie White, Miss Jeanette Samuels, Mr. Darion McCloud, and myself. We hope that you come and enjoy. Thank you.
Hey everybody, my name's Darion McCloud. I tell stories, and today is Martin Luther King Day here in Columbia, South Carolina, and we are closing out the 30 Americans art exhibit, and so it's a good day. Let's hear some good stories. All right, so I think the first one I want to tell to you is a story that I actually found in a book. The book is entitled Willie Jerome. It's written by a woman, Alice Faye Duncan, who's kind of a super hero. She's a librarian and a storyteller. Yeah, go figure that. But also the art is done by a local artist here out of Columbia, South Carolina, local but world-renowned Tyrone Jeter. So this is Willie Jerome. When summer come, Willie Jerome played jazz on the rooftop all day long. Mama say he be up there making noise. I say he be up there making music. Mama say Willie Jerome better be off that roof when I get home this evening. My big brother, Earl, who talk all bad and mean, say that Willie Jerome ain't got no talent. He say he need to put that trumpet down. I get Earl told quick. I say Willie Jerome on the rooftop playing sizzling red hot bebop. And I like it. I like it a lot. Sizzling red hot bebop, asked Earl. Crazy girl, can't you hear? Willie Jerome up there making noise while you walking around calling it music. I dismiss Earl and trot on across to the corner store. Mr. Jackson peeps the groove in my stride. He want to know why I'm smiling so. Willie Jerome on the rooftop, I say. I've been grooving to his noonday songs. That's why I got this smile on my face. And that's why I got this bop in my stride. Mr. Jackson hands me some candy, and in exchange for my shining quarter, he looks out at Willie Jerome on the rooftop, shakes his head like it's a crying shame. Little Miss Judy, he said to me, I hate to tell you the bad news, but Willie Jerome can't play no trumpet. That boy up there just making noise. I walk on out the store and head for home. I bop on back to my front stoop. That's why I see Miss Alversa Lee watering green plants in her window. Hey there, Miss Alversa Lee. You liking Willie Jerome's jazz music? Honey, nah, she yells down at me. I'm not liking it one bit. So do Miss Alversa Lee a favor. Go tell Willie Jerome to hush with all that racket. I start to feel sort of blue, cause don't nobody seem to care for Willie Jerome's rooftop music except me, myself, and him. Willie Jerome, I shout. Willie Jerome, I just wish I knew another somebody who loves and understands your hot jazz the way I do. Willie Jerome is a boy of very few words, so he don't answer back or nothing. He just keep digging on his horn, moving back and forth to the music. Around 6 o'clock, Mama get home from work. And she frowned this ugly frown. She tired. She want to hear his noise. I'm going up to the roof, say Mama. I'm going to put an end to this. But I quickly catch her head and ask her to, wait a minute. Don't bother Willie Jerome, I plead. Just close your eyes, Rest your mind. Let the music speak to your spirit. So Mama takes a seat next to me on the front stoop. We close our eyes. We rest our minds. And let the music speak. As the evening sun begins to set, Willie plays his last sweet melody. Mama move her neck to the cool music. She take my hands, put them in hers. I owe you an apology, Mama say, because Willie Jerome can blow. If we had took the time to listen, all of us would have known. Brother can play that red hot bebop, I say to Mama. Willie Jerome can play. Thank you.
My name is Jeanette Samuels, and I'm here to say I'm going to tell you stories in my own unique way. So sit right back and rest a spell, because I've sure enough got some stories to tell. Now, before I tell even one story, I want to acknowledge Leonardo Drew, who created this gigantic bale of cotton. Well, it was some painstaking work, because he used old mattresses that he created this exhibit. And my stories are centered around that, because the cotton industry was big in the South, and African Americans were a major part of it, and even young children. So my story is centered around children and a little girl who went out to the cotton fields with her dad. So this is called, Oh Lord, I Wish I Was a Buzzard. Now, a little girl went out to the cotton field with her dad, and her dad looked down at her and her little brother, and he said, you know, if you two pick a lot of cotton, I'm gonna give y'all a sucker. I think you'll earn it. And so that's exactly what they did. They went out to the cotton field, and they picked, and they picked. They picked, and they picked. Ooh, it was hot. Oh, it was so hot. The sweat was just rolling off my face. I looked over and saw a dog sitting under a tree, and that dog was just a patting. And I said, oh, Lord, I sure wish I was that dog. But I went back to picking, because I sure want my dad to be proud. I picked and I picked. I picked and I picked. And then way over yonder, I saw a snake curled up against a rock. And I said, ooh, hot as it is out here, I sure wish I was that snake. But I picked and I picked. I picked and I picked. I picked and I picked. Woo, that sweat rolling off my face. I was so hot I could barely take it. And there was a butterfly fluttering from blossom to blossom. Why, that butterfly landed on each blossom, and I looked over and I said, I sure wish I was that butterfly. Woo, but I kept on picking. I picked and I picked. I picked and I picked. And I looked up in the sky, and there, flying around in circles the way buzzards do, there was a buzzard. Why, that buzzard was just a flying and feeling that breeze through his wings, and I said, oh Lord, I wish I was that buzzard. But I went back to picking. I picked and I picked. I picked and I picked. And sure enough, I was almost done, but I kept on picking because I wanted my dad to be proud. Now, my daddy, he had promised that he was going to give us a sucker. So I made sure I had a lot of cotton. I made sure I picked it well. So we picked another couple of days, and by Saturday, we had enough where Daddy could take it and get it weighed. Once he got his cotton weighed, he was paid right there on the spot, and he took us and got our sucker. Now, I took my sucker. I pulled the candy off that stick. I put that stick in my mouth, and I went around letting everybody know I had candy, lots and lots of candy. And then I licked, and I licked. I licked and I licked. Now, it had gotten to be pretty late in the evening, and as the moon was shining pretty on the day, it was time, the moon shining pretty on the evening, it was time for us to go home. And we went home, and we was as proud not only to get the candy Dad promised, but proud we were able to do what he wanted. All right, found a needle and the needle bent, and that's the way the story went. Thank you.
My name is Elsie White, and I like to tell stories that I hope will delight. The story that I'd like to share with you today is entitled Yunde Goes to Town, and it comes from a book, Cowtail Switch by Harold Kurlander. Yunde lived in a small town in Africa called Akim. Yunde had never, ever been out of his village. He had always heard talk about a great town way down by the coast named Accra. Yunde wanted to visit Accra one day because he had heard so many good things about Accra. So one day his parents decided to send him to Accra on business. So Yunde put on his best Sunday outfit. He got his knife and put it in his belt. He rolled up some food in a rag and put it on his head, and he started out for Accra. Now, as I said, Accra was down near the coast, and it was a good 300 miles away. And Yunde started walking. He walked and he walked and he walked and he walked, till pretty soon he came to the outskirts of Accra, and he saw on one side of the road a huge herd of cows. And he thought, my goodness, I've never seen so many cows before. There was a young man standing there shepherding the cows. So Yunde goes over to the young man and said, who do all these cows belong to? And the young man said, Minu. Well, let me put a point here, because where Yunde came from, the people spoke the Akim language, but in Accra they spoke Ga. So when the man said Minu, in his language he was telling Yunde, I don't understand. But Yunde thought it was the man's name. And he said, oh my goodness, this Minu must be one of the richest mans in the country. So he continued on. And he soon came to the outskirts of Accra. And there was a huge building there with beautiful tall doors and glass windows. And the young lady came out of the door, and he asked the young lady, he said, this is a beautiful building. Who owns this building? And the young lady said, Minu. And Yunde smiled to himself. Wow, Minu owns all of those cows down there, and he owned this tall building. He said, Minu must be a really, really rich man. So he continued to walk. And pretty soon, he was right in the middle of the marketplace. There were many people there selling merchandise, pots, pans, spoons, and whatnot. So Yunde asked one of the merchants, he said, where did all this merchandise come from? And the merchant looked at Yunde with a puzzled look on his face and said, Minu. And Yunde said, wow, Minu owns all of this too? So he continued to walk. And then he found a young man sitting at the edge of the market playing a drum. And there were lots and lots of people all around. And Unity asked the young man playing the drum, where did all these people come from? Well, it was a special market day, and everybody in the town came to the market on that day, so that's where all those people came from. But the man looked at Unity and said, Minu. Unity continued to walk. Wow, this man Minu must be really, really powerful. He owned all those cows, he owned a tall building, he owned the marketplace, and all of these people keep coming to town for Mr. Minu. In fact, they ought to change the name of this town to Minu Town instead of Accra. Unity continued to walk. And soon he saw right down by the coast a whole bunch of fishing boats. And there were fishermen there throwing fish, hundreds and hundreds of fish from boat to boat. Unity went up to the fisherman and said, my goodness, I've never seen so many fish in all my life. Who owns all these fish? And the fisherman said, Minu. And Unity said, wow, that Minu is Minu here, Minu there. Everywhere I go, it's Minu. Is that only the language that they can speak, the people here can speak? Anyway, he was pretty near the building where he had to go to take care of the business for his parents. He went in, took care of the business, and was leaving. He was on his way back home. And he saw this huge line of people. Some were crying, tears coming out their eyes, they were wailing. And he said, wow, what kind of procession is this? And then he looked a little further, and one of the men had a casket on his shoulder. He said, oh, this is a funeral. And he walked up to the man, he said, to the man in the funeral procession, he said, who's dead? Whose funeral is this? And the man said, Minu. And Unity said, oh my God, you mean Minu is dead? Minu, the man who owns all of these cattle, and the man who owns the tall building and all the marketplace, Minu is dead? Man said, Minu. Unity continued on toward his home back in Akeem. He said, I can't wait to get back home to tell all of my friends and family about Minu. He said, I just don't understand.
Hi, I'm Nancy Tolson, and I'm going to tell you a tale, and the story I'm telling is Beauty's Only... What? Well, it was marrying time for Madeline. Madeline, it was time for her to get married. Her mother and father knew they had to get her out the house, and it was marrying time. So Madeline was having all these suitors come to the house. The father was finding good prospects, and he was bringing them over to the house, and every one of them, Madeline said, no, he is not the one. So they were frustrated. They were upset because they were bringing in, the nicest men, the greatest people. They were loving the people that were coming to the house. But Madeline said, not worth my time. So the father just gave up. He couldn't believe it, but he just let it go. Madeline one day decided she was going to go to the marketplace. So she went to the marketplace with her basket, and being persnickety as she is, was picking out single grapes, single strawberries, going around, this color corn ain't my type. But anyway, she was doing all of that, picking. And all of a sudden, she saw him from afar, He was gorgeous. Ooh, from the top of his head to the bottom of his shoe, he was just absolutely gorgeous. She was falling in love. She was falling in love so much, she stumbled and almost dropped her grape that she had in her hand. But she walked over to this man, and he looked up at her, and he had a smile with teeth that were so shiny and white, and they were pearly too. She was in love. Oh my goodness. She said to him, "My name is Mickalene. How do you do?" And he said, "How do you do?" She said, "Can we spend our lives together?" He said, yes, we can. And so next thing you know, she dropped her basket, took his hand, and started walking with this man, this beautiful man, through the woods. She was in love. She didn't care. Don't tell my mama, my daddy, I'm just gone. And next thing you know, they got deeper into the woods. Mickalene wasn't paying attention. She wasn't caring. But all of a sudden, he did this. And his feet were gone. But Mickalene was looking up, so she didn't care. And they just kept walking. Next thing you know, he went, and his hips all the way down were gone. But Mickalene didn't care because she was looking to his eyes. You're just beautiful. And so they kept going, and they kept going. And the next thing you know, he grabbed the torso of his body and threw it to somebody in a cave. Mickalene started noticing that one. Now, that was kind of crazy because she didn't even know what she was holding by that time, but it had a grip on her so hard that she couldn't even move. She was a little disturbed because all that was left was nothing but his head, but it was still really pretty, really nice. And next thing, they kept walking and walking, but by this time, he shook off his head, threw it over to someone in a cave, and all that was left was nothing but a skull. Oh my gosh. Oh, she became frightened. Oh, let me go. And he said, "Oh no, you said we'll live our lives together." And she was grabbed on by something pretty fierce, and he dragged her into a cave. Oh, Mickalene she was so upset she didn't know what to do. She was a prisoner now, and all she had was this skull of a man. Well, you know, in the corner sat his mother, full-bodied woman. Oh, but she was silent. And for days, Mickalene kept begging to the woman, "Please, just help me. Please, I'll do anything if you just help me get away from your son." And the woman just looked at her without any pity. Mickalene started talking about her parents and how wonderful they were. She told her how her mom used to make all these beautiful biscuits, and how her father farmer who was in the field, and he would pick so great food and make it. And oh my goodness, Mickalene just kept telling them about her parents, and the woman got soft. And she said, "Okay, when my son goes to sleep tonight, I take you out and I set you free." She said, thank you so much, but you're going to have to give me some biscuits. So Mickalene promised her the biscuits. They got loose that night. They ran to Mickalene's house, and Mickalene was able to have her mother make some biscuits just for this woman. Well, the woman thanked her and left with a happy bag of biscuits. And you know what? Mickalene realized that beauty is a little bit more than skin deep. Thank you.
Hey, it's me again, Darion McCloud. I want to thank the Columbia Museum of Art and its affinity group, the Friends of African American Art and Culture. If you don't know, now you know. All right. And of course, make sure you feed your local storytellers. All right. So I got a story to tell right now. It's a little bit different, but I think it's appropriate on this historical day. There's a lot of history in here. See if you can find it. But before I tell it, for all you parents and especially your grandparents, you're welcome. You'll see what I'm talking about in a minute. All right. So to begin this story, I have to begin this story with a question. And my question to you today out there in video streaming land is, what is this? A thumb. You're so correct. This is a thumb. Smart group. But guess what? Because we are all storytellers here, this is also a little boy. He's got a funny looking little boy, but he's still a little boy. And this little boy, we shall call him Langston. Everybody say, hey, Langston. Hey, Langston. And this is his house. And he lives inside his house like this. Now, if this is a little boy, then this must be a little girl. Oh, is she sweet? She's so cute. We shall call her Zora. Everybody say, hey, Zora. Hey, Zora. And this is her house. And she lives inside her house like this. Now, one morning, Langston, he wakes up and he peeps his head outside his window like this. And he says, hey, it's a beautiful day. I think I'll go visit my friend. So then he opens his door. Then he goes outside. And then he shuts his door. And then he goes up the hill and down the hill. And 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 up the hill and down the hill. Until he gets to Zora's house. And then he knock, 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 knock. Nobody answers. So then he knocks again. Still nobody answers. So he figures, hey, Zora must not be home. I'm going back home. So then he goes up the hill and down the hill and 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 up the hill until he gets back to his house. Then he opens his door. Then he goes inside, and then he shuts his door. Now, the next morning, it's another beautiful morning. But this morning, Zora, she wakes up. She peeps her head outside her window like this. And she says, hey, it's a beautiful day. I think I'll go visit my friend. So then she opens the door. Then she goes outside, and then she shuts the door, and then she goes up the hill and down the hill, and 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 up the hill until she gets to Langston's house. And then she knocks. Nobody answers. So then she knocks again. Still nobody answers. So she figures, Langston must not be home. I'm going back home. So then she goes up the hill and down the hill and 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 up the hill until she gets back to her house. Then she goes inside. She opens the door, she goes inside, and then she shuts the door. All right, so the next morning is another beautiful day. But on this morning, both Langston and Zora, they both wake up, they both peek their heads outside their windows, and they both say, hey, it's a beautiful day. I think I'll go outside and see my friend. So then they open the doors, then they go outside, and then they shut the doors, and then they go up the hill and down the hill, and 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 up the hill and they almost run over each other. And she said, hey, you almost hit me, no, you almost hit me. And they stand like that all day long, just going back and forth, singing songs and dancing dances and playing plays and just, blah, 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 blah. All right, everybody out there, say along with me. Here we go. Blah, 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 blah. That's right, all day long until finally, street lights come on. You know what that means when the street lights come on. So you have to say goodbye. Bye, bye, I gotta go. Bye, 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 I gotta go. Bye, 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 bye. And then they go up the hill and down the hill and 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 up the hill until they get back to their houses. And then they open their doors. And then they go inside. And then they shut their doors. And then they go to sleep. Thank you. Have fun, guys.
Hi, I'm back, Jeanette, and I want to tell you the story called Fly, Eagle, Fly. One morning, a farmer went out to the fields to look for a lost calf. Now, there had been a storm the night before, and the calf didn't return with his little herdsman. So he went out looked through the riverbed. He looked through the tall grass. He went near the mountainside. Everywhere he searched, he could not find that calf. So he decided to wind up the mountain. And as he started up the mountain, he went through the gullies. He went in and out as high as he could go to see if he could find that lost calf, but he didn't. Now, sure enough, as he journeyed on through looking for that calf, there on the very peak of the ledge of the mountain was a little chick. Why, he went and looked at it and he said, why, this is an eagle chick. Why, I believe that storm must have blew it out of his nest. So he held it in his hands and he said, well, I've searched for this calf and I can't find him. I think I'm just going to journey on back home. And as he winds back down the mountain, as he heads home, he discovers that the calf came back on his own. Made him really happy. So he presents the chick to his family. He said, I know this is an eagle chick, but we're going to raise it as if it's a chicken. So he placed it down in his kitchen with all the other chickens, with the roosters looking on, and he said, yes, we're going to raise it as if it's a chicken. So many days went by, and they fed the chickens and the eagle chick bits and pieces. It started to grow. It started to look a little different from the other chickens, and the kids nearby would look at it and say, man, I don't think that's a chicken. And they'd laugh and look at it as he pecked around. And the farmer said, well, he's pecking like a chicken. He's walking like a chicken. Why, he's feeding like a chicken. He even thinks like a chicken. You know what? That is a chicken. So one day a friend came by and he sat there and they were talking and shooting the breeze, and he sees this eagle chick and he says, man, I really want you to know that is not a chicken. Now he smokes on his pipe a little bit and he watches him and he sees how he's acting like a chicken, he's walking like a chicken, he's feeding like a chicken, and the farmer said, oh, you know what, he definitely is a chicken. And so his friend said, oh, no, that is not. He said, I want these kids over here to grab that bird for me and bring it on over here. So the kids get the bird, they bring it over to his friend, and his friend lifts it up as high as he could, and he says, look, you are the king of birds. You are meant to fly. And so he tosses him up in the air, and he says, fly, eagle, fly. But the eagle goes right back down to the ground, pecking and squawking right along with the chickens. And his friend just shakes his head, and he goes on home. But he's not done. He comes back the next day, and he says, I'm going to convince you that that's an eagle. And the farmer says, be my guest. Try as you might. So he fetches a ladder, and he looks for the tallest thatch hut there in the village, props it up, and he has the kids help him collect that eagle again. And this time he's gotten a little weight on him. He's a little heavy as he climbs up the ladder, but he reaches up, climbs up to the very top of that hut, and he tosses him again. And he says, fly, eagle, fly. That eagle spreads his wings just a little bit, but looks down on the ground and goes scurrying right back to being a chicken. His friend goes home disappointed again. He says, I'm just not done with this. I'm going to have to make sure that he understands that this is a majestic bird. This bird has no business down here on the ground squawking and carrying on with these chickens. So the third day, he comes very early in the morning, before day. He has a lantern because it's really, really dark. He knocks on the farmer's hut, and he says, hey, I need you to get that bird. And he says, have you lost your mind? Do you know what time it is? Why, it's before day in the morning. I mean, what's going on? He says, get that bird. So he reaches over his children. He picks up that bird, and he says, we're going on a journey. He says, what? He says, yes, bring that bird. We're going on a journey. So they head through the winding path up the mountain, and it's a pretty long trail. And they're hot and tired and panting, but he keeps on going. He keeps on going until they reach near the top. He looks down, and he sees they're quite a distance down there. You know, they can hear the river rustling, and they could see they climbed quite a bit. So they get near the top of the mountain, and he perks that bird right down the ledge, and he talks to him. And the farmer says, I don't know why you're wasting your time. Don't you understand? He thinks he's a chicken. He's not going to understand what you're saying. So he says to that bird, you are the king of birds. You are meant to fly. You are meant to soar. And they look up, and the sun begins to peep over the horizon. First, it's a few little pink haze, and then it becomes a bright sun, as bright as it can be. Then all of a sudden, there's a gust of wind, and that gust of wind is all that bird needed. He opens his wings, and he takes off, and he flies, and he flies. He flies as majestically as he should. He flies into the horizon, and never again to be known as a chicken. And, you know, I want the children that are listening to know that you have the same spirit within you. You can soar and be anything you want to be in life. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Elsie White again. The story I'd like to share with you at this time is entitled The People Could Fly by Virginia Hamilton. They say in Africa that the people could fly. They say in Africa there is magic. The people could step up on the air and walk on the air just as though they were crossing over a gate. They would spread their wings and fly in the air like huge blackbirds against the bright blue sky. Many of the people had been captured as slaves. They had to shed their wings because on the slave ships there would not have been enough room for them and their wings. Many of them became sick on the ships with the up and down motion of the sea. They were miserable. Many of them forgot their magic. Many of them forgot that they could fly because they were no longer able to smell the sweet smells and the sweet air of Africa. There were many of the slaves who could fly, and there were some who could not fly. But you could not tell the ones who could fly from the ones who could not fly because they all looked alike. However, there was one tall, statuesque man by the name of Toby who knew those slaves who could fly. There was also a very tall, statuesque woman by the name of Sarah who worked in the fields. She worked every day from sunup to sundown with her baby on her back. It was laborious work. The sun was hot. Many times she was thirsty and hungry and weak. The man who owned the slaves, he was called the master. His assistant who helped him was called the overseer. The overseer's responsibility was to go through the fields to determine those slaves that were working up to par. And if they were not working up to par, he would point to his assistant, who was known as the director, and the director kept a whip in his hand, and he would whip those slaves that were not working up to par. Now, Sarah had been working this particular day from sunup to sundown. She had a baby on her back, and the baby started to cry. The baby was hungry. Sarah was hungry, but she knew that she could not stop to comfort the baby, because otherwise she would have been cracked with the whip. The baby cried louder and louder, and the overseer came by and said, "Shut that thing up." Sarah was devastated. She wanted to comfort her baby, but she knew that if she did, she would be cracked with the whip. She stooped down. The overseer said, "Get up, you black cow." Sarah stood. The baby was still crying. He pointed to the director. The director took his whip and cracked the baby. The baby continued to cry. And he continued to tell her to shut the baby up. Sarah, in her devastating state, fell to the ground. The overseer came over again, pointed to the director, who took his whip and whipped Sarah again. He whipped her so hard this time that the bottom of her dress was torn into shreds, and the gashes on her leg bled into the earth below. Sarah said, "I've never been treated like this in my life. I need to go back to my country, to my land." Toby went over to Sarah and he said, "Yes, child, it's time for you to go." He put out his hands and he helped Sarah to her feet. Then he said the magic words, "Kum yalikum babatumbe, kum yalikum babatumbe." Sarah put one foot in the air. Then she put the other foot in the air, and soon she was stepping on the air. Her wings appeared, and she began to fly in the air with her baby held tightly to her chest. Sarah flew until she was out of sight. The next day, there were 2 young males in the field working. They were hot, tired, and thirsty. The overseer came by, and he determined they were not working fast enough. He pointed to the driver, who took his whip and cracked the young men with his whip. They fell to the ground, their blood seeping into the earth from their wounds. The next day, the same thing happened. There was another young man who was weak from thirst and hungry in the heat of the sun. The overseer pointed toward that young man, and the driver came with his whip and whipped him also. Toby gave assistance to both young men. He went to them, held out his hand, and he said the magic word, "Kum yala kum babatumbe, kum yala kum babatumbe." And the young men rose, their wings appeared, and they rose into the sky, over the fields, over the trees, and into the clouds until they could be seen no more. The overseer saw what was happening. He said, "Grab that man, old man Toby. He's the one doing all this magic. He's making our slaves leave. Grab him. Let's kill him. Let's kill him." The overseer started towards Toby. The driver had his whip up. He started towards Toby. The slave master was right behind with his gun drawn. They were going to capture Toby so he could stop making the slaves disappear. Toby started laughing. "Ha ha ha! Don't you know who I am? I'm Toby." And Toby started yelling the magic words out loud. "Kum yale kum babatumbe, kum yale kum babatumbe." And all the slaves that could fly that were in the fields, they suddenly stood up, their backs straight. They grabbed hands with one another. Their wings appeared, and they began to soar over the fields, over the trees, into the clouds. Hundreds of slaves, because of the magic, they were able to fly away from the misery that they were experiencing on this plantation. Well, the overseer told this story to everyone who would listen. The master said it was all a lie. He said it was just a figment of the overseer's imagination. And of course, the driver, the one who always cracked the whip, he had nothing to say at all. Those slaves that were left looked with longing eyes as though to say, "Take us with you, take us with you." But Toby, who was right behind them, looked down at the slaves and he said, "I wish I could take you with me, but I don't have time to teach you how to fly." So those slaves that were left, who did not fly, they told this story to their children. And their children told their children's children. And now I've told it to you. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Thank you.
These have been phenomenal stories by some phenomenal storytellers. I want to thank them all for being here on this wonderful, glorious day to celebrate Martin Luther King's birthday. We also want to thank the Columbia Museum of Art, and especially Friends of the African American Art and Culture, FAAAC, for this day. We really do. I want to say the last 3 stories were phenomenal. Brother Darion brought in Langston and Zora to remind us of our own cultural history here. Sister Jeanette brought in a story, The Eagle Who Thought He Was a Chicken, which was an inspiring story basically from Ghana. It was told by James Agre, Quasar Agre, during a time when Ghana was going for their independence. And that was the same message that they gave them. And Sister Elsie with the story, The People Who Could Fly, and another story of flying, being able to be mobile and being able to get up. And these all are stories for the children, and something I believe that Martin Luther King would inspire to. And it's also a message for all of us to fly, soar, and to continue to go forward. My story ain't like that though. Anyway, there once was a mayor, and he was a wise mayor. He was the wisest mayor in the whole city. He was so wise, he told everybody how wise he was. He was braggadocious. Yes, he was. He was always bragging about his wisdom. One time he went to the square with all the people in it, and he said to them, listen here, I'm so wise. You send me a puzzle, give me a riddle, and I'm going to be able to solve it. Okay, everybody thought about it for a little while. Next thing you know, there was a package that came to the mayor's house. He opened it up, and there were 3 dials in it. And there was a note, and the note said, please tell us what's the difference in these 3 dials. Now, these dials were identical. They were identical. Same length hair, cloth dials too, pretty brown dials, same outfits, everything measured perfectly and exact, all 3. So the mayor looked at him, he tried to figure them out. He studied him for a little while, and he said, I don't know about this one. I'm gonna have to think. And he stroked his beard and thought about it. He said, you know what? I'm gonna bring in my counsel. So he brought in his counsel. The counsel, he said, look at these 3 dials. Tell me, what is the difference in these 3 dials? Counsels looked at the dials. They all had a funny look on their face because they couldn't tell. And they didn't want to look like they were dumb in front of the mayor. And they said, excuse me, we've got some emergency things we have to do, so we don't have time to look at your dials. And they left. Okay. So the mayor kept looking at the dials, but he was trying to figure out who were the next people he could bring in. Then he thought about it. I'm going to bring in my scholars. So he called the scholars up. Scholars came, very dignified. He said, tell me, what is the difference in all 3 of these dials? Well, the scholars went over to the dials, looked at the dials. One of them picked it up to weigh them all, no difference. One of them came and actually sniffed it. Sniffed all 3, no difference. One of them actually came up and shook them. No difference at all in all 3 dials. Whew. You got us. We don't know. And the scholars walked away. Well, the mayor was trying to figure out who could he call to help him with this puzzle, and he just didn't think about any. I know. I'm going to call in my storyteller. He called in his storyteller. Storyteller came and said, what can I do for you, Mayor? How can I serve you today? Is there a fable that we can tell? Is there a lovely story? Do you want us to create one about you? He said, no, none of that. I need you to tell me, what is the difference in these 3 dials? They all look alike. I've had my counsel in here. I've had my scholars. He said, and my last thing is you. Oh, okay. The storyteller walked over to the dowels, looked at the dowels, and Mayor, you're telling me that you didn't really know the difference in these dowels? It's so plain. The mayor said, well, I know. I'm testing you right now. Well, I'll show you. Storyteller picked up the first dowel, went over to the mayor and yanked out a hair from his beard. Ooh, ow, ooh, ooh. And the storyteller put the hair in the dowel's ear. And it kept putting it in the ear, in the ear, in the ear, and it never came out. The mayor said, well, what do you know? How about that? Ain't that something? Now, what's that mean? And the storyteller said, well, it's a perfect example of your counsel. Things go in, but they never come out. Ooh, okay. Storyteller put the first dowel down. Storyteller picked up the second dowel. He said, well, what about that dowel? Storyteller went over to the mayor and yanked out another hair from his beard. Ooh, ooh. And the storyteller put the hair in the ear of the dowel. And that hair went right through and out the other ear. So, And the mayor said, oh, isn't that something? Oh, wow, ain't that something? Now tell me, what does that mean? Storyteller said, well, these are your scholars. What goes in one ear, whatever they hear, they put out and tell exactly the same. Okay. And put the second dowel down. Well, the storyteller then picked up the last dowel. Picked up the dowel, and while the mayor wasn't looking because he was kind of going like this, she leaned over and plucked another hair out of his beard. Put that hair right in the ear. And this time, it didn't come out the ear, but it came out the mouth. You see, this one is the storyteller. And the mayor went, oh, I see. He said, but now we got another mystery. What is that, your mayor? He said, well, you put it in straight, but it came out curly. Well, mayor, whenever a storyteller hears a tale, they're always ready to flourish it, to decorate it, and to make it something entertaining. Thank you for this afternoon being with us, and we hope that you will come back and see us next year, same place, same time, same channel. Take care.